Hey, everybody, we're going to give people maybe 30 seconds to filter in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Shall we do it, Garrett?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right.
Well, thanks everyone. This is our, I guess, first session of the new ProNovos series called the ProNovos Power Session, and we'll be focused on the WIP workspace today. You have Kevin on the product side and Garrett on the customer success side. So I guess let's just jump right into it. Kevin, let's say I'm kind of new to this. I'm jumping into the WIP. Why don't you give me a rundown on, maybe how I can add some KPIs to the top and really get my hands on this and customize it how I want.
Yeah, so when you look at the WIP, you'll notice there's kind of three main sections kind of broken out in the WIP. The first is the KPIs up at the top. The second is the visualizations here, the charts. And then the third down is the project list. So what you can do to modify these top two sections is if you click on the workspace functionality, go to layout and select edit. This is going to allow you to go in and basically modify the different KPIs and visuals that you have available. So this becomes a really good tool for if you want to change the type of KPIs that you're tracking. So you can see here, we've got a lot displayed here. You can go in and remove any of them by just clicking this little minus in the top corner here. So if you say, hey, I just want to get down to just a couple, let's say I want to see just three, you can remove them. And then if you want to add KPIs, you would just click on this plus button here and start to add them. So let's say, for example, you really want to track backlog on your projects. You could add backlog and it's going to start to show the information for all of your projects aggregated into one KPI for backlog. So you can add as many KPIs as you'd like. You can see, I think we've got about 30 or 40 different KPIs here for you to choose from. The other nice thing that's cool about this is you can change the layout a little bit. So if you want to go 2 KPIs per row, 3, 4, 5, you can change that layout. And what I typically recommend for people to do is basically structure your KPIs. So what you have is like KPIs in the same column and rows. So for example, if you wanted to look at projected final cost and you wanted to compare that to your revised budget, let's look for our revised budget here. We can add that, and now we can kind of stack them on top of each other. So it makes it just a little bit easier to read when you're comparing. Okay, I want to see how my projected final cost is comparing to my revised budget. You can stack them just like that. I also did this real quick here, but you can see you can kind of drag and drop things, rearrange them in any order. So really nice to be able to kind of customize them to your own needs. And then the visuals work the same way below, where you can basically select 1, 2, or 3 visuals that you would have in a row. We don't let you add more than 3 because at that point the charts just get too small and you really can't make anything out. So let's
Right.
say I want to have 2 visuals in a row and I want to go add another one. What you would do here is you would give it a name and then a description. So if I said, this is an example, and then I'll say test, test, test in the description. You can then select what you want in your horizontal axis between your project manager, project class, or client. So let's say I want to look at it by project manager, and I want to look at the cash received today. I want to see how my PMs are doing collecting their payments. You
Yep.
can go in and add the chart. So that's what you're doing when you're adding the chart. You're basically selecting, hey, what do I want to show on my x-axis? What do I want to show on my y-axis? I'm super excited for an update we have later in the week. We're going to start adding the ability to add more types of charts and beyond just standard bar charts. We're going to call them predefined visualizations. So keep an eye out for an update later this week. And that's hopefully something that we're going to continue to expand and add to the library as time goes on. So yeah, that's how you add a KPI and a visual. Once you're done, you would just come up here and say, all right, I want to save it. And then all those changes are going to get locked in. I'm going to cancel out here because I don't want to overwrite what I've been working on. But that's how you would go about adding a KPI and different charts and visuals.
This is great. I love it. Now if there's maybe a KPI I use in my company I don't see ProNovos offers, is there the ability to have that added if I put in a request?
Yeah, so if you reach out to customer support, our man Garrett here, typically what he'll do is he'll get that request back to the development team, and then we'll look at to see what the effort is to add it. And we're usually pretty good about it. I would say when we first launched the WIP report about 18 months ago, there was probably only about a dozen different KPIs that we had. And then over time, as we've gotten requests from clients, we've been adding more KPIs, more available columns to the table below. So don't be shy if there's another metric that you would like to see on the WIP report that we don't have. Feel free to reach out to Garrett. We can't always accommodate the request, but we do our best to. And that's really the other place that we see a lot of people use that workspace functionality, not only modifying the KPIs and the visuals up at the top here, but then also with the columns down below. So we try and make the default WIP report what most contractors would see on their version of the WIP. Contract amount, projected final cost, job cost, percent complete, earned revenue, shouldn't say year to date. Cost to complete. Actually, I'm sorry. Let me go back to my default one. Change things without even realizing it. Okay, here we go. So on the default one, you'd have your projected profit, profit margin, earned revenue, job cost, percent complete, backlog, bill to date, over under billing. So all the things that you would need to produce an accurate WIP report, but you can really customize that. So let's say, for example, over under billings, you don't like seeing it in one column, you want to see it in the two columns. So when you're making your updates to your financial statements, it's easier to know what those are. You could come in here, you could find your over billings, you could find your under billings, and then let's get rid of this one here. And now I've got them broken out into separate columns. So it really allows you to customize it the way that you're used to seeing it, the way that you're used to running your business. And what's great about this is it gives you the flexibility to include financial metrics on your WIP that go beyond just what you need to know what your revenue and over under billing is. Because I think that's how we see a lot of contractors really leverage and use their WIP report. Yes, it's super important for making the updates to your financial statements, but a lot of people are using it as kind of a bellwether for what's the financial health across our project. So being able to include different columns, different metrics, it gives you some additional insight into what's happening on all of your different projects.
Yeah, this is great. I love it. And I have the ability to kind of reorganize my columns as I see fit. Is that correct?
Yeah, so you could come in here and basically just drag and drop them, rearrange them as you need to. The other thing I'll always say is the nomenclature that we have here in ProNovos, we know every contractor is a little bit different. So you can come in here and also change the column names. So let's say instead of projected final cost, you call it estimated cost at completion. You can come in here and change the name as well. So a lot of different ways to kind of really customize it and make it your own version. And then same thing as like with the KPIs and the visuals. Once you've kind of configured it with the columns you want, you can go to the workspace here, save as, so then that way you can go back and reference it at a later date. And this is super handy because what it allows you to do is you can create basically different versions of your WIP report. So I'll walk through a couple examples here that I really like that may not be your classic WIP report, but I think it really helps you give valuable insight into what's happening on your project. So the first one I'll show here is one where we're looking at specifically, hey, what do our labor costs look like on all our projects? And I think this is a really important one, especially for self-performed contractors. Typically, if a project goes south, it's going to be within the labor cost codes. So this is a great way to kind of get an assessment of how are we performing specifically on our labor line items on these projects. So what you'll see here is I've got my percent complete, labor budget, labor cost to date, labor hours to date, budget labor rate, and actual labor rate. So I can use this really quickly to start to get some insights into which projects might be struggling from a labor standpoint. So for example, if I sort on my actual labor rate here, I can quickly find projects where my actual labor rate is far exceeding my budget labor rate. So I can see Centerpoint Energy Plaza. Okay, my labor rate is $27 higher than what I budgeted. This is going to raise some questions. Hey, am I staffing this job correctly? Maybe I want to call the foreman, the superintendent, and say, all right, do we have the right crew makeup out there? Do we need to kind of reconsider it? So different things like that, where you can start to get quick insights beyond just kind of what the top level metrics are in a project. You can add some of these columns, create different versions of the WIP that give you more granular detail into how a certain aspect of the project is performing.
That's excellent. I see the ability to group by. Does that mean allow me to kind of drill out on PMs and things of that nature?
Yeah, so this year, if I want to go to group by project manager, so now I'd be able to see, okay, are certain PMs struggling more with their labor than others? So I can kind of collapse my rows here, and it's going to give me an aggregate view of all of those projects per PM. So I can kind of get a sense here of how each of my PMs are performing. So again, let's use just the labor rate as an example. I can see, okay, Jack Jones, whoops, that's kind of aggregating it. You can kind of start to see his labor hours to date. It's pretty in line here. His labor costs are pretty good. Looks like Carolina, she's having her labor hours are way over her budget. So that's telling me, hey, maybe I need to check with Carolina, see what's going on with her projects. Is it one project she's having a trouble with, or is it multiple? And same way that we can save any of the columns, KPIs, or visuals we modified, we can also save this grouping as well. So let's say the next time I come back to this labor report, I want to see it grouped by the project manager. I can just come up here and save it. And then when I reload the WIP report, it's going to show it grouped by the different project managers. Let me show one other that I really like. It's going to be this year-to-date analysis. So I think this is something we see a lot of people look at when they're doing their WIP report is they want to understand what are they earning on the projects in the given year. So what I've done here is I've constructed the KPIs up at the top to basically tell me what the contract cost and profit are in total on the project. What was it in prior years? What's my year-to-date revenue? And then what's my current backlog and cost to complete on the projects? And this is a great example of what I was talking about earlier, where you can basically construct your KPIs to kind of tell you a story in both the rows and the columns. So looking at the rows here, I've got my projected final contract, my cost, and then it tells me my profit. But then if I go down the column here, I can see my projected final contract is 21 million. I've earned in my prior years 4 million. My year-to-date revenue is almost 11 million. And then that means my backlog is 7 million. So that way I can kind of see a breakdown of all of the contract I have. When did I earn that revenue and what's still remaining in my backlog? But then across the rows, I can also see, hey, I can see what my year-to-date revenue is, my year-to-date cost, and what my year-to-date profit is. So it's a really good way to kind of tell a story of what's happening with your data. And then kind of same thing, you can kind of modify the rows or the columns in the chart below to see my year-to-date and my prior year. So just another example of how you kind of create a workspace to tell a specific story about your data. So yeah, that's another option you've got there. And I think we're only got a couple minutes left here. So Garrett, I don't know if we want to open it up if anyone has any questions that they want to drop in the chat, and maybe we can close with that.
Yeah, sounds great to me.
Yeah, so we'll leave the last minute or two if anybody has any questions or other comments that they have about how to leverage Workspace functionality to get more insight into your financial data. Feel free to drop it in the Q&A, and Garrett and I will stick around for a minute or so to answer any questions that people might have. So we have a question. What do you call this one? This is exactly what one of my owners wanted to see. Yeah, so this is what's great. This isn't actually a specific one. You can create this one on your own or any permutations of it. So exactly what I was showing before, when you go into the layout and the edit, you can basically construct these KPIs and columns to match exactly what I am showing on the screen here. So it's something that you can kind of create on your own and kind of, add any tweaks that you need to. I'll also say if you want to look exactly like this, feel free to reach out to Garrett, and he can help you kind of walk through the steps to set up your workspace to match this exactly.
Absolutely.
Sweet. Well, I think we're up on our 15 minutes. So Garrett, I don't know if there's anything you want to close with, but yeah.
Nothing, we're good. And we thanks everyone for your time and joining our first power session. And we hadn't planned on having these about once a month, so we'll be in touch on the next one.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all for joining.